Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I am an entrepreneur who created my company, National Business Capital, from literally $0 out of my spare bedroom to over $2 billion in business loans secured for entrepreneurs nationwide. Since 2007, I have seen just about every type of business. I provide money and help entrepreneurs access capital to scale fast, but I also know that it's possible for you as you scale to replace yourself, to build systems, processes, and great teams of people that can live on without you so you can actually enjoy your life and your company can still grow. I will not only tell you the peaks and valleys of my story, but I will also bring on world-class entrepreneurs to tell their stories and share their lessons on their growth journeys. Welcome to The Growth Show. Welcome to The Growth Show with me, Joe Camerato, as your host. I've got a great guest today, Josh Cadillac, and his company is Close for Life. Really special guest. Really happy to have Josh on. Thanks you for being on the show today, Josh.
Joe, always a pleasure to hang out with you, buddy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. And just a little bit about Josh. Josh Cadillac is a real estate coach, national speaker, author who trains real estate professionals how to close for life by building lasting success through extensive knowledge. His unique method combines the education real estate professionals need to survive in this industry with the tools to convert that knowledge into rapport, credibility, and trust. Josh has been a top producer since going full-time in 2008, quickly earning many of the most prestigious certifications and designations in the industry. Josh, thanks for being on.
Joe, as always, buddy, just a pleasure to hang out with you, man.
Same here, man. All good stuff. I love the brand, love everything that you're doing. I've been on your show as well, and we've had some really great conversations. Close for life. Like, what does that mean for you if someone's watching this and they see your brand? Just curious to hear from your perspective what that means.
Well, Joe, I'm originally from New York, right? And in New York, if you got somebody that's good, that does anything, I don't care. It could be a plumber, it could be an accountant. It doesn't really matter. And a friend says to you, yeah, I really could use a plumber and accountant. And you got somebody good. The first words out of your mouth is, I got a guy. You got to use my guy.
I got a guy. Everyone's got a guy.
Absolutely. Close for Life is all about being that guy, being that gal, being that person that customer says, this is the person you got to use. Because in reality, Joe, every customer really would love to have that person. I mean, who doesn't want to know the person in the police force that can fix the ticket, or the plumber that'll show up at 2 a.m. and take care of it for you and only charge you $50 because you're a friend? Everybody wants that person.
Yeah.
So how to be that person to the customer, how to take that place in their mind that they're not only happy with what you did and they'll come back, but they'll be the ones going out there and telling everybody, hey, look, you got to use my guy.
I love that, man. And I guess you could call me the money guy, because if people need money in their business, they call Joe and connect with my team. So I like that. What guy would you be considered, Josh?
For some people, I just got a call the other day, just out of the blue, somebody that I never met before. And it was a listing over $1 million. And they said, somebody told me, like 2 or 3 people told me, you are the only person in real estate I should talk to about listing my property. My advertising budget to get that business, zero. Nothing.
I love it.
What it cost me was actually just simply doing my business in the way that business should be done. Because here's the cool thing, and this is like the other piece of Close for Life, is that it forces you, if you're going to close for life, it forces you to do business in such a way that you can't take it like something you do to get to the rest of life. You have to take it personally and seriously. Well, here's the cool thing about doing that. It gives you a business and a job that you're proud to be associated with. You are proud to be associated with yourself. You're proud to be part of a business like this. Like, this thing I've built is a good thing.
Yeah.
And man, the joy that you get from knowing that and seeing that you've created something that on its face is a good thing, that gives you life in your life. It adds to you. Work is not a place to go dread. It's a place where you're building something beautiful and good and wonderful. And for most people in this life, Joe, they just flat out miss out on what the true pleasure of the pursuit of happiness, the true joy, as the founders kind of thought of it, the joy one gets from the pursuit of a life well lived.
100%, man. And I think too, everyone's looking for that quick buck path of least resistance. I
Yep.
think doing things, the right way, they take a little bit, it takes longer to build. And,
Sure.
and it's amazing too, just doing the right thing. It's so simple, but it gets missed by so many people. And sometimes the right thing is just saying, hey, like, you know, maybe, your property, you know, um, we should list it for a little bit less, which would technically hurt your pocket, or, maybe right now is not the right time. Let's listen in 2 months when, people are going back to school, before school, whatever, just as examples where
Yeah.
it actually can, like, it's better for the customer, maybe not necessarily for you and your commission, but people pick up on that stuff, and that's what drives the referrals and really the long-term success. And in today's world, it's amazing. Just by doing the right thing and working hard, you can really stand out and shine, because so many people are missing that. It's so easy, but so missed.
Well, Joe, I mean, I think that really the stems from whether or not you're going to be an investor or a consumer, right? If you're going to be an investor, you're going to take and you're going to invest in your business. Because I look at the customer, I say, look, I don't want this deal right here. This deal is incidental to me. I want every deal you're ever going to do. And so I'm going
Yes.
to conduct this deal in such a way that I earn, because maybe it means me saying no to this deal. Maybe it means me saying, hey, look, don't sell it, rent it. If you want me to handle the rental, I can. If not, I'm going to tell you what, this house is on a main street. Put a sign out front. You won't have to pay any commission. You'll want up ahead of the game.
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe you'll get like every one of their family members, friends, or they'll become a raving fan and tell everyone about you, of how amazing you are.
Absolutely. And even if not, even if they take your advice, they do it with somebody else, whatever happens, you maintained your standards and told them what the right thing to do was. Your business is not, the I don't know what you want to say, the Toyota, the Honda that everybody's driving. No, you're the Bentley.
Yep.
You have a standard. You're holding these standards that, look, obviously they weren't the right clientele for me. I service the kind of discriminating customer that wants a true advocate in the industry. That's who my people are. If we're looking for bargain basement shoppers,
Yeah, and I don't think people realize how powerful, creating those raving fans are, and having people, cheerlead about you, or your business or your company, your brand, and really driving those referrals. And a lot of times you can't quantify it, because sometimes those people just come in and you don't ever find out who they came from. I mean, just the other day, I'm in this business group. It's called YPO, and there's like 85 members in a WhatsApp group. And it's funny, someone was talking about asked a question about, hey, anyone, can anyone recommend this? And there's a service that I used and someone else used, so I recommended it. And then someone else like, I used that, it's the best, blah blah blah. And everyone was like, oh my god, I can't believe I didn't know about this. I'm going to reach out. There was like 10 people in that group that were like, I'm reaching out now. And it's because this service just goes above and beyond. They make it convenient. They really service the customer. They care. They do the right thing. It makes sense, and the pricing's right. So, and just and it's funny, because just we're talking about this, and yesterday I was like, wow, like I wonder how many times this has happened about my company that I just never knew about.
yep,
What a Facebook group, WhatsApp group, at a barbecue with a million people, or people talking about, your company, my company, myself, yourself, your brand. So it just is interesting. And it just made me really just reinforce, like, just keep doing the right thing, keep delivering to customers. And that compounding effect it is unquantifiable, but it does work.
absolutely. And I mean, I don't think it can be understated, the reward in your own soul at knowing
Yeah,
that you're
just
doing
doing
a
the right
great thing.
thing.
You're
Sleep
just doing
well
a
at night.
great you're building a great thing. I mean, I remember my father and his friends would be in the car, and they, we pass a building and say, you see the brick on that building? I did the brick. Look at how those lines are. Look at
Wow.
these guys took pride in what they did. I mean, my father would tell me stories about stuff that he did, and the pride he did, because he knew he could have done it a half-ass way.
Yep.
And he
Yeah.
went in there and he just, working till, through the night into the, middle of the night to get stuff done because it had to go out and it had to be perfect. It had to be good. Excellence was all they would accept. And so, I used to tell people all the time, my father had a big sign in his plant where no customer could see it. The only people that went in the plant were the employees. And all it said was quality and service are our only product.
That's great. I love that. And I think the pride and the respect and is definitely diminishing, unfortunately. But people want it, and it's definitely in high demand because it's missing so much. And I really I really have that I have a respect for the old school mentality
Sure.
of things like that.
Well, I mean, they got some stuff right and they get some stuff wrong, right? But I
Yeah,
mean, it's
we all do.
balancing. Yeah, we all do. Like, and so the wise position to be is to kind of take the 10,000-foot view, which too few people do. Step back and say, okay, what did they do well that we're not doing so well right now? And what they people tend to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, that's old fashioned. Well, you know what? Maybe they got some stuff right that we're getting wrong right now. They tended to be a lot less selfish back then. I
Yeah.
think we're
Yep.
much more selfish now. And I think that maybe being a little bit less selfish and a little bit more concerned with truly helping others, not to make ourselves feel good, but recognizing that other person deserves quality, deserves service. I think that's a healthier place to come from.
100%. No, I couldn't agree more. So, just kind of with all that, what do most people not know about their own product? Like, what do they miss, in their own product? I feel like it goes hand in hand with what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. It's really astounding to me because real estate, I mean, to me, I love real estate. Real estate is such a great product, but I know without fail, if I want to embarrass an agent, I can ask them one or two questions about the product, like a tough one, like what's good about real estate? And you'll watch most real estate agents are going to struggle answering that question. Normally, the way they answer that question to me is telling me about what it's like to be a real estate agent. You're like, what their job is like. And no. The product you sell, what's good about it? And so, it goes up better than the stock market. Somebody told me that the other day. I said, great. Where are you getting that information from? Like, how much? What does the stock market typically do? Like, tell me
Yeah.
about your product. They don't know. They heard a soundbite someplace. They
Yep.
regurgitated. They don't actually know what's good about what they do. And my let's say my method very much is, let's say I was meeting with you, Joe, to take and sell your home. The typical approach is going to be you're on one side of the table, eyeball to eyeball with me as the agent sitting on the other side of the table, and we're looking at this transaction, and I'm trying to figure out how you're going to let me do the transaction. That's not what I want. I want to circle around to the other side of the table, be looking at the problem the same way you are, and say, Joe, how do we solve our? Let me help you solve our problem. I want to be looking at the problem from the same direction you are, and trying to get you what you want, as opposed to trying to get what I want.
Makes sense. Good stuff. Well, I'm all about growing fast, Josh. I'm curious to hear how did you grow fast? What's your grow fast, story? What's the secret to your success?
If I could put it in one word, I would say it was fear. 100% it was fear.
Mm.
And I say fear because I was going into the real estate market, coming out of what I was in, and going into real estate. I mean, I had just I owned real estate. I was a commercial real estate investor. I owned several properties and stuff like that. And I had restaurants, and I got wiped out in 2000, going into 2008. And I realized I needed to take and pivot, because when I say I got wiped out, I mean, I had all of this and what looked like a fairly solid, not over leveraged, well balanced portfolio turned out to be over leveraged and under balanced portfolio. And I wound up losing everything basically. And so I had to take and start from scratch. And I was afraid that I was going to take and do a deal for someone and not know the parts of the business that I didn't know. What I'd been an investor, but I had never filled out a residential purchase and sale agreement. I had never gone on a listing appointment to try to get a listing. I didn't know how the stuff was done. And while maybe I could fake it till I make it, and that would be okay for me, customers are going to get hurt in that process. I could screw up and cost somebody money.
Yeah.
So I was terrified that I was going to make a mistake. And I mean, it wasn't terrified to the point of inaction. It was terrified to, oh crap, I've got to figure out how to solve this lack of information that I had. So I took every real estate course, designation, certification class I possibly could at the beginning to try to get to the really real. Like, what is there to know about this thing so I can go in there and make sure I'm not doing anything stupid?
Yeah.
And sadly, with all of that I took, I would say 5% was actually something worthwhile. 3 to 5% of it was like, like of the stuff you learned in high school, what percentage of it is it's kind of the same experience. And I can't stand that. I watch a YouTube video and in 10 minutes they give me more than I got in, a
In the
semester.
real estate class. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and I'm not like a big person for doing all that sort of stuff, but I mean, in general, I wanted to take and what I really learned most from was the instructors going off script, because some of these guys were highly successful people that are kind of just winding things down, settling into teaching a little bit more because, they're in that point in their business, and them kind of going off script and saying, hey, look, this is what you got to do. This is
giving you the real life examples that they experienced in their own business. Yeah.
Let's pull the curtain back a little bit. Let's talk about what it's like. Hey, look, they're going to look at you this way. Their eyes go down. You lost them. All right. So you got to back up, figure out what you just said. Like that stuff, the stuff that actually gets you to take and win the customer and win their business and win them for life. That stuff you're not going to pick up in a class. I mean, unless the stuff I try to teach, I try to do that. I try my best to bridge that gap. I mean, it's the amount of creative bandwidth that I try to use to come up with ways like, how the hell do you duplicate body language in a negotiation?
Yeah.
Like, how do I show you that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Training is really one of the hardest things, and it's funny. You could be great at what you do, but trying to put it into training is not an easy thing. And then the other part of it is because you can't duplicate like the real thing, that real interaction happening. So trying to really teach, there's like never better learning than hands-on on the ground, in the field. But if you also try and share some real things like sure you do in your products and training and giving like a real perspective, not this standard real estate state class that you have to take to get your license.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure people learn a ton of stuff, but it's funny because we're big with training here at my company and training people business and business financing. It's not an easy thing to do, to train people on business and owners and all these industries. But it's a big focus for us. I definitely get what you're saying. What was a real, you got crushed in 2008, as did I. It was a crazy time. I exited the mortgage business in 2007, which was a great time, and got into commercial business lending, but still like anything tied to anything in 2008, 2009,
anything tied to anything,
and especially finance, like, there was a major reset, and, I almost lost my home building the business, credit card debt. I mean, you name it to keep things going. So I get it. I respect it. What was a tipping point for you?
The tipping point was in my first year in the business. I recognized that the only thing that was going on were going to be distressed assets. And so I bit the bullet and learned how to do the short sale side of the business as well as I could. And so within, it was kind of a little bit of I don't want to say it was ever a hobby. I realized it was something I needed to make work. I mean, the reality of it is I didn't have an option at this point.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Absolutely. My back is up against the wall. You can either, roll up in a big ball and die, like Sinatra says, or you can take and make it happen. And so, I was actually in a position there with the short sales where agents that were longtime seasoned agents were like bringing me listings and saying, I don't want to handle it. I didn't want a referral. Just do it. Just do this. Because it's a short sale, like what's going to come from it? Well, I mean, I was sitting there with 70, 80 active listings by year 2 in the business. And, did they close right away? No. I mean, I had some that took 5, 6 years to complete the short sale. I mean, it was pulling teeth, but guess what? I'm an investor, like I said. I took and I put those in the pipeline and I worked them and I worked them and I worked them. And I only think I lost in the grand scheme of things of the thousands of short. I think maybe I lost like 3 or 4
Wow.
in the entire. Yeah. I
Because
mean,
they wound up going through happening, and just
we were, we
it's
were really good
amazing.
at getting people out. Yeah.
A really successful entrepreneur told me once that there's always gold in any economy. You just have to find it, and sometimes it's harder to find.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those agents, it's probably safe to say, there was one hell of a run from '03 to 2007, 8, and it was easy.
Yep.
And everyone was making easy money. Everyone was having fun. It was a big party. Those were probably some of the best times of my life. Um, and I was young, hustling, doing well, and then that music stopped overnight, and then everything became hard. And I really realized how spoiled so many people were in those years, and we're just like lazy coming out of that, and no one wanted to work hard. And the folks that doubled down, that worked harder, I never worked harder in my life coming out of '08, '09. And there was a lot of people complaining that, oh, there's no opportunity, there's no this, and there was gold out there, and I was finding it, but I was working around the clock.
Yep.
And it seems like you were doing the same thing as well, and you were working
Absolutely.
harder than everyone else, and then it turned, and you were already in the mix, had a platform. And I would bet that all those short sale customers that were a pain in the ass or whatever, that weren't ideal and easy, they probably became future buyers when the market finally turned around.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's the crazy thing, right? The crazy thing is these folks that nobody wanted to deal with, they were the easiest listings in the world to get because all you needed to do was show them that there was hope to get out from underneath the burden they were in, but they didn't care about the price. They
Yep.
didn't care what price you sold the home for. And so, I mean, it made getting the listing all my job on the way in was not to take and negotiate a price in the house. My job was to show them the path to get out from this burden they found themselves under. If I did that, I had the listing. And I recognize the second thing that people get wrong so much is who the customer is. They don't know the product and they don't know who the customer is. I
Yep.
understood who my customer was because I had to short sale my own home to get out.
Yep.
I got it. And I know I knew every bit of it, the emotional disconnect that occurs when you finally realize, hey, this home is going to somebody else and I'm not going to get anything for it. And
Yep.
how, what that feels like on the inside. I knew it. And so I learned from that. And I think this is a super important thing is to really do my best to put myself in the place of the customer as best I can. That true empathy, the better I can feel what they're feeling, the better I'll be at meeting them where they're at, serving them how they need to be served. And so to me, that's the gold. That's the good stuff. If you're doing that, all of a sudden you're going to find customers that are, I don't know. I mean, he talked an awful lot. I don't listen a tremendous amount. I don't ask the customer to talk a ton. I mean, I need to know what they need to know, but I'm supposed to be the expert coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, empathy doesn't cost anything. It's amazing. It's another missed thing. And a little bit of empathy, or an empathy just in general, just goes a long way. And that's in business, with your employees, with your customers, in life. It's another big mess.
It's a game changer. It really is, because there's two things that you got to get right: the product and the customer.
Yep, that's simple.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, what do you think? What is the secret to being a successful agent?
I think that it stems from understanding and getting your head around and really practicing those two things. I mean, as we were talking before, and it kind of popped in my head, and I didn't say it at the time, but the idea of habits. You were talking about how agents were lazy coming out of the bubble into the bust, right? That's because you got into the habit of working a certain way and expecting a certain result. And those habits, man, there's so much. They're almost like a black hole. They kind of pull you towards them. They have this tremendous suctional force of you just wanting to fall back into your old habits and ways of doing things. And it takes a lot of effort to take and break those habits and build new ones. So I mean, building the habit of thinking through who the customer is, building the habit of not listening to a piece of news and saying, "Oh, that's nice," but thinking through how does that piece of news affect real estate? Today, jobless claims are up higher than they've been since November of last year. Well, how does that affect real estate? Well, as it turns out, fewer people having jobs typically doesn't work out well for real estate. So
Yeah.
jobless claims being up, but then again, they're not up that much more than they were pre-COVID. It was 218 to 285. I mean, it's quite a bit, but there's been a lot of people finding a new normal because once again, bad habits from COVID, people got lazier, they didn't want to go to work, they don't like to work as much, whatever. It seems like people are changing jobs a little bit more, and this is kind of an evening out process. But that's what I'm thinking about because
Yeah.
my business is a place I take pride. I need to be on top of my game. So I think being on top of your game, looking at things, not from a standpoint of, oh, gee, that's nice. I wonder what Kim Kardashian is doing later today. You know, it's a thing. I mean, I one of the things that I do just more of a as setting I don't want to say maybe a standard, but just kind of as an example. There was a book I read called "Can't Hurt Me," and if you don't like foul language, don't listen to this book because this man swears. But he is one of the toughest human beings alive, right? And at the end of the book, he was talking about social media, and he says, "I follow no one. I don't have any time." And so I thought that was really, a cool thing because I look at so many people and they're sitting there on social media and they're just, using all this time up, like just putting, well, let's be honest, it's cotton candy, most of it in. I mean, look, I get it. There's some great sources out there. I try to be a good source on social media too. But I mean, there's just so much cotton candy to
Yeah.
get to any kind of meat and getting through that. And so I think that having standards for your business and driving relentlessly toward them and trying to really put the bandwidth into taking that step back and saying, wait a second, I'm running a business here. What is this business going to be about and how am I going to do it? And then every once in a while taking a step back and looking at it from the boss perspective, from the standpoint of the CEO, and saying, am I doing what I said I'm doing? Am I doing what I set out to do, or am I getting distracted? Is my practice different than what my mission is? Because I say this in a lot of places, but there is definitely this idea, this schizophrenia of the human interaction, where I am both the boss and the employee of my business, and as the boss, I'm responsible to maintain the standards of the company. But as the employee, I'm looking to get the hell out of work as early as I can and cash my paycheck so I can go out and party. And so I need the boss to take and make sure he's cracking the whip and making sure that they're doing the HR work, doing the morale building work with that employee to make that employee a person that buys into the business. And look, we have this fight with ourselves all the time. I kid about it and say, the package of Oreos is in the cupboard and I know it's there, right? The
Yeah.
negotiation that I have with myself. I negotiate with me as to whether or not I'm going to go destroy that package of double stuffs.
I've
Right?
never done that.
That's never happened, and I'm the only wacky one here, right? But we have this back and forth negotiation with ourselves, whether it comes to dieting or exercising or work or anything. Well, look, I worked out hard this week. I didn't eat too much. I don't have to do cardio today. I mean, who the hell are we talking to? We're literally talking to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Which
recognizing that.
I think what too, just, especially being, in any type of sales business where you're really responsible for your own income and destiny, you really got to hold yourself accountable and be disciplined and be relentless and keep that energy up and keep going when you don't want to. And, when you're in, again, any type of sales, especially real estate, you're really making your own schedule. You're just responsible for you. And, it's easy to just, throw the towel in, at 4 or 5 o'clock or decide to put in those extra hours, so it's definitely interesting. Why do you think so many people don't make money,
I think it circles back to the idea we just talked about, Joe, which is the idea that they can't be a good CEO for themselves. I mean,
yeah. And even like it doesn't, I think this is where whether a lot of people are so wrapped up in today and of just, owning their own business or, startups become sexy. And whether you're doing like, then you have to be even more accountable, right? Because knowing that now you're like truly your own boss. But I think where it just gets missed, whether you're working for a great company or you're doing your own thing. Like, no matter what, you got to hold yourself accountable, especially if you're working for an organization and you've got a sales role. And I think a lot of people sometimes look at it and think it's easy. Oh, if I go off and do this on my own, I'll make 100% of the commission. And I've been doing this for 15 years. If you can figure out how to keep 100% of the commission, please let me know and we'll split it 50-50. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then no one calculates the expenses and other things. And, you really can build out a business within a business, and real estate's provided that platform. I think some people get it, some people don't. I don't know, it's just really, really interesting.
Well, I mean, I think that what you'll see is agents that are not successful tend not to be successful with themselves in the rest of their life either.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you're right. Being the CEO of your business comes, or being your own CEO comes to light most when you work for yourself, because now you don't have oversight. You see what you do when nobody else is sitting there with a baseball bat to make you do it. But let's be honest, that's usually a reflection of what's going on in the rest of your life, because in the rest of your life, nobody's sitting there with a baseball bat to make you do stuff either.
Yeah. This is true.
And so, how good are you at getting you to do what you know you need you to do? Number one question I ask agents first off when we start the business. If it's not very good, then now we know where we need to start. When I do coaching, that's where we need to start. We need to take and start setting some goals that are reachable, because you need to redefine you to you as the kind of person that does what you set out to do. And once you start to build that habit and build that self-respect for yourself, that, hey, look, I say it, I do it. Man, when you have that going for you, when you start to build that in, now you can actually start to get stuff out of yourself. And to me, that's where the real yield comes from.
Agreed. And you mentioned something before about when 0809 happened and the market changed and everyone had habits and they need to change those habits. I just I really want to dial in this because it's really important and it's key. And I think a lot of people don't even realize this. It's a big miss. I talk about it with my team, and we just went through this again with COVID. We got really complacent. We were at home in our pajamas. We forgot what a dress shirt was and dress shoes, and it was workout clothes and comfy clothes all day. And hey, God bless. And in a way, there was a nice reset. There were some beautiful things that came out of COVID. There were some bad things that came out of COVID.
Sure.
And there was some really tough times, and I had to really reorganize my whole company. So I don't want to sit here and pretend like COVID was just amazing. It crushed a lot of business, and
it was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah, and it was just really interesting when you really think about it. And I talked about this with my team because what happens is things change, right? And people are not usually fans of change. And the market's constantly changing. And with COVID, things got bad really fast, and then they started to turn around fast. And it was so hard for people to realize very quickly, holy shit, this is serious and how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
But then as it changed, people were still in this complacency mode. They got comfortably picked up new habits, as you mentioned. And what I realized in these market changes, people aren't able to change, recognize this is bad. I need to make some moves fast now and protect as much downside as I can. And what can I do? Because now I got to change whatever I was doing. It was definitely easier pre-COVID. Now it's changed, hard to get customers, whatever it might be. I got to change quickly. But then as a lot of people are so complacent and things are coming back, people are still stuck in that complacency mode. And they feel like, changing back and getting motivated, is something we talked about a lot. And I really respect, it was a big topic in my company. And because we talked about it, we were able to change quickly. And you can see we're excelling past a lot of others now. But it's interesting to me how quickly things are always changing, and how not quickly people they're not able to catch up with that fast enough. And I think that limits a lot of people. They fight the change.
Sure.
And I've just seen it over the years, especially when we change anything in our own business to get ahead of what we think is going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, look, let's be honest. What normally makes people change is discomfort. And what I mean by that is, oh man, my pants don't fit anymore. I gotta have to take, and I gotta have to eat better. Like I gotta do. Like I've been putting it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so whether that's anxiety or whatever, I mean, folks had to come up with new habits with COVID because the options were taken away from them. You didn't have a choice as to how, you couldn't go to work, right? So you had to develop these new habits. And yeah, you were bored and your social life and all this sort of thing, but you adapted because you were forced to over enough time that the habit was built. Well, the
And
problem is
hopefully with some
now,
good ones. Yeah.
hopefully they were some good ones, but for a lot of people, those habits in general were isolationist. They were, let's be honest, let's call it what it is, a bit more lazy.
Yep.
And so recognizing on the way in as the CEO of your business, hey, look, these habits I formed out of necessity. These were an interim answer to a problem. I need to diligently now work to form and forge the habits back the way they were or better ones going forward because I can see what's gone on. But most people in general, Joe, I say it a lot of times, they're comfortable being passengers in their own life. They kind of go where the river leads. They don't ever take and get the paddle and say, look, you know what? There's a nice place on the
Going
shore.
another
Let's go
direction.
hang out over here. Why don't we?
Yeah.
That looks like a good spot for a picnic. Like
Yeah.
nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
Most people are just sitting there riding along. Hey, where are we going, Mom?
Yeah.
And so, I think there's a place for actively looking at your business, looking at your life, and sitting there and saying, hey, wait a second. Why don't I take responsibility for this? Why don't I jump in the driver's seat and use all of my effort and all of my will to try to direct where I go? And the answer for most people is the reason they don't or won't is they're afraid of failure.
Yep.
They're afraid if they give it their best and it doesn't work out, that their best wasn't good enough. And realistically, the blow to the ego that is, and I get it. I'm not unsympathetic to that. The blow to the ego that would be is a hard one to take. But
yeah, the failure and the unknowns.
yeah, but it's worth the risk because at the end of the day, if you don't, you're taking your magnum opus with you into the ground, right? Your best music is still left inside of you and you never got it out. And I
Yep.
mean, it's always interesting. One of the questions I ask when I teach, all over the country, I ask agents or anybody I'm speaking to, who here thinks there's a better version of themselves that they haven't yet seen? And pretty much every hand in the room goes up. And the people that have their hand down, I say, so what you're saying is you've already peaked. The best is behind you. It's all downhill for here. Is that what you're saying? Because realize by not putting your hand up, you're saying that I've seen my best and I'm on the way down, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so everybody's got their hand up pretty much. And I say, whose job is it to get that out of you? Well, it's obviously our own job to get our best out of ourselves. So who loses most if we don't get that out? We do.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Great question.
Thank you. I thought it was when I came up, I was like, yeah, that's not a bad question. So
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. But I sit here and say, who's the biggest loser if we don't get that out? It's me primarily because I'm stuck with me forever. I can't get away from me no matter what I do. I'm stuck with this. Right. So if I can't get the best out of me, I'm stuck with a lesser version of myself that I could actually reasonably wind up with. And plus, it's all the people that I love and spend time with because they're around me a whole bunch too. So if I can take and forge a better me, if I can take and pull out of me more, well, the greatest beneficiary of that is me and all the people I care about. So why wouldn't I do that? How does it make any sense to hold back? Because it's more comfortable to be lazy? Look, that's the investor mindset right there. The investor mindset takes on the pain today so they can experience the pleasure tomorrow. The consumer mindset is they take the pleasure now and they pay the credit card bill when it comes in. And I've always been a fan of the investor mindset. Let me take the pain now. Let me invest so that future Josh, that guy, he's a happier camper.
Love it. Great stuff. Really good stuff. So, which is a perfect segue to my next question is
I love those.
Don't worry. As an entrepreneur and an investor, how do you make decisions, Josh? I'm sure people would love to hear your thought process, in decision making.
Well, I always like to run it through the filter of, is this the right thing to do? Is this a good thing? One of the courses that I teach is ethics, and ethics are taught all over the place. But the study of ethics isn't actually the study of right and wrong. I think ethics goes all the way back to the Greeks. We're talking about ethics. Ethics is actually the behaviors that you have that tend to result in human beings having the happiest life, right? And so I always want to run through the ethical filter of like, is this a good thing on its face? Um, have I done things? I mean, it's interesting. I've done things in the past where it's been a breach of the code of ethics because it was the right thing to do, right? Because I understand where the code of ethics in real estate primarily exists to protect the consumer and to protect other agents. It's protect fraud. Well, I'll give you an example. It's a story I tell in my ethics class. I had a customer come in and he had his listing with another agent, and it was a short sale listing, and the agent had taken the listing 4 months ago for a year and had never ever made contact with the customer, never shown the property, never done anything, would not take the customer's calls, emails, would not respond in any way, shape, or form. And he comes into my office and he's in tears. And he's like, "Can you help me?" I said, "Well, look, you got to call the other agent." Like, I can't do this. The property's already listed. He's like, "Please, please, what can you do? What can you do?" And eventually I broke down. I said, "All right, look, I'll figure out a way to get this listed." So I get it listed, I get it sold, I get it done. Breach of the code of ethics. It was. I knew it. But I also knew the code of ethics was there to take and protect the customer. So look, worst case scenario was I'm gonna have to pay the commission to somebody and maybe I get a fine on my license, but I did the right thing by somebody, right? So sure enough, the day after closing, letter comes in from the other brokerage. We see that the listing has closed in the MLS. We had the listing in the listing agreement. You owe us the full commission. That's what the letter comes in and says. Now, mind you, I've been trying to contact them for months now to talk about this listing. Never answered a call, nothing. So the only time in my career I've ever had to go before the tribunal, if you will, and be judged, have my behavior judged. And I walked out of there and we won completely. We totally won because my case was, look, guys.
Yeah, documented and everything. Yeah.
I had everything, but that the consumer was the one getting hurt. So when it comes to decision making, that to me is first and foremost, is the right thing to do. And in general, I'm always looking to see if this is consistent with the brand that I'm trying to build. And what I mean by that is I don't believe in perfection. I believe in excellence. If I wait for perfect, nothing's ever going to get done. So if I do things excellently, they can be done. And so, am I in how I make this decision? Is it something that I can do really, really well? So, it's one of the big hangups that guys have right now. Guys tend to overcommit. Guys either love to undercommit, they won't commit to anything, or they overcommit. They say they'll do it and they don't.
Yeah.
For me, I've tried to build this habit up of being a person to myself that if I say it, I'm going to do it. So if you were to say to me, "Hey, Josh, you want to collaborate on a new book I'm writing?" I'd say, gee, Joe, let me think about it. I'm not going to tell you no. I'm not going to blow you off either. I mean, I'm not the guy that says, like to blow you off. I'm the guy that's sitting here saying, "Hey, look, if I tell Joe I'm going to do this, I got to come through. I don't have a choice." There is no not perform option. It's either get it done or say no. There is no middle ground. And so I think that's the other filter that I would run everything through. Can I do this with excellence and perform and outperform what I said? Because the one thing I never want to leave is you, Joe, with an opinion of me that Josh, hey, look, he said he was going to get it done. And yeah, he got it done, but it wasn't anything good. I can't deal with that because I've spent my entire business career trying to create a different thing. So there's a lot invested in what I've built, and I can't afford to sacrifice that by one bad choice.
I respect that and appreciate that. Thank you, Josh. I'm going to skip my next question. I was going to ask you if you wanted to do a book with me, but I guess I'll go on to the next one.
With you, Joe, for you, I definitely, I put it in the list of projects that would be near the top.
Nice. On the roadmap. So
that's actually the name of my first book, was The Roadmap to the American Dream. So
I love that. That's awesome. I have to check that out.
Yeah.
What advice would you give folks looking to start a business today?
Expect it to be at least 2 or 3 times harder than you think it's going to be.
Yes.
Think about how much you think you're going to have to work and double it.
Yep.
Just out of the gate, every problem that comes in is your problem. And the reason why I'm bringing up all the negative stuff, it sounds like I'm trying to talk you out of it. I just want you to go in with your eyes wide open. Yeah. If you go in there like an animal expecting the incoming, you'll be okay. It's when you go in there thinking it's going to be not as bad and it's way worse, that's when you get demoralized. That's when you wind up walking away. So if you think it's going to be awful, if you think it's going to be just abysmal and it's just slightly terrible, you're going to feel like you're ahead of the game. Like, hey, it's 100%. Not nearly as bad.
Yeah, I wish I knew that going into it. I mean,
right.
And it'll take you 2 to 3 times longer to make the money that you think you're going to make, and it'll cost you 2 to 3 times more than whatever you think it's going to cost. And I mean, it didn't really come together for me to like years 5, 6, and really 7 is really where it started to come together.
But here's the thing: it feels 2 to 3 times better, 2 to 300 times better when you survive the fire and come out of the other side.
100%. Yeah. And there was many times where I thought about throwing in the towel and, giving up and if I would have went that route and shared that story, I think people would have said, oh no, I get it. And, but it was, so couldn't be, more happier and proud that I, powered through it and, builds a lot of confidence and
Sure.
And then pushes you through the next challenge that you'll absolutely have, in your business at some point, right?
Becoming a new one every day. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads me to the one other thing that I would say to anybody that's starting their own business. Before you figure out your compensation package, before you figure out where your location is going to be, before you figure out anything, figure out how your product actually helps the customer. What is good about the thing you do that's going to make the customer's life better? And how you're going to explain that to them well, what the risks are, what the problems are with your product, and what you're going to do, how you can mitigate that so it's not an issue for the customer. If you can do that, you show the customer you've thought about what it's like to be them. And in any kind of business where you're trying to sell anything, that is the one thing that is most missing in this universe today, is people that actually give a rat's ass about the customer more than the commission that customer is capable of bringing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Well, good stuff, Josh. I mean, the last question I have here is probably the big question right now. This crazy market that we're in. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has just been one hell of a roller coaster.
It's a ride.
I've made sure to strap myself in and put the emergency seatbelt on as well too.
5-point harness here, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a 5-point.
Inflatable collar.
If they had a 7-point harness, I'd wear it. What does real estate have in store the next 12, 24, 36 months? I feel like 36 is just way out there, but next 12, 24 months, what do you think we're looking at here?
Well, I think it's really a reflection of the inflationary market that we're in and how persistent this is going to be, and whether or not people really think that the Federal Reserve's actions are significant enough to change this. Now, I have the benefit of being in a somewhat insulated market in Southeast Florida because I have the benefit of influx of demand coming from any South or Central American country that has any kind of political unrest. That we are one minor revolution, one government change away from a real estate boom in Florida. We're just seeing it now with Colombians coming in and people from Chile. I mean, there's all this influx coming in. So I have that benefit because for people that speak Spanish, it's a place you can go and you can pretty much get by speaking that in Spanish here. And it's a culture that welcomes that. And the weather's not that much different from what they're used to. So say what you will, these are reasons why people migrate. Plus, I have the benefit of domestic in-migration is still tremendously high in Florida. I mean, it's north of 64% in versus 30 some odd percent out, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah, you got the whole a lot of New Yorkers down there now.
We do. That used to be the big thing back in the 90s, was people from New York coming down to retire and stuff. Now it's people that are young people that just want to get the hell away. Hey,
Yeah,
like I can go and sit at a restaurant and have my whole family at one table kind of thing. It's a deal. And
yeah,
so that has insulated my market some. But if I'm going to give you the outlook in general, I think nationwide you're seeing real estate slow down, and that's to be anticipated. Real estate appreciation was never sustainable at 20% and north on an
of
annual
course.
basis. So settling back down to a more reasonable market is anticipated. Do I think this is a bubble? No, not even a little bit. No way in hell. No. Why? Pretty straightforward. The next time that real estate prices go down, Joe, in an inflationary market, it will be the first time in history that's ever happened. Real
Yeah,
estate
that makes
prices
sense. Yeah, yeah,
Real estate
100%.
prices don't go down. Look, is anybody anticipating the price of steak going down anytime soon, or the price of Coca-Cola cans going
Yeah,
down anytime soon? No. Why? Because the money we're using to buy it with, we know the inflation is reflective of that money becoming less valuable.
yep,
It's simple. What makes you think another tangible asset like real? Oh, it's overhyped. It's not overhyped. People are buying real estate now because they're smart and they realize that real estate holds up well in an inflationary market. In fact, it outperforms the inflation. The one class that I teach, the inflation class, I have a few different statistics that I have, but the aggregate inflation from 1970 to 1980 was 103.4%. Do you know what the average real estate price did in that same period of time? Up 172%.
wow, that's amazing.
Now, to be clear, because people are going to say, oh, but interest rates. You're absolutely right. Interest rates were 7.5% in 1970.
Yeah, yeah,
By
or even higher.
1979, they were
Yeah, I
17.66%.
remember my dad
And,
telling me about this.
and real estate prices still went up
Yeah, yeah, it's wild.
172%. And here's the double dip. Here's why it's genius to be in real estate right now. Don't buy the home to live in. Buy the duplex, triplex, fourplex, buy the multifamily property. Because guess what also happened in that period from 1970 to
Rents went up.
1980? The rents went up 125% in that same period of time. So to be clear, your money lost 103% of its value, but the rent was up 125%. So that's profit on top. In addition, your property appreciated 170 some odd percent. And I got one more for you. This is my favorite. I used the bank's money to buy it. I borrowed their money when it was most valuable and spent it. And then I paid them back with less and less valuable future money that was going down in value. So, yes, I think getting long in real estate, even with interest rates where they are right now, makes sense. I think that you're going to have to see interest rates continue to go higher. I think that, we just saw a downtick in the numbers to 8.5% today in CPI that came out. That's the consumer price index, down from 9.1 last month. I don't know that that's a meaningful enough change, because in doing my research for the inflation class, I had a look at the entire period of the 70s. And what you'll see is that the inflation didn't spike and stay up. It went up and came down and went up and came down. It's actually really, really persistent. And so if the expansion of the money supply is as large as they've said it is, the expectation of this inflationary market continuing is pretty strong. And as long as that goes on, real estate prices will do well toward the end of an inflationary cycle, when the music is winding down, when interest rates are very, very high and money starts to become very, very tight. Then real estate markets tend to tighten to the point where you'll see a buyer's market. Real estate prices will only go up 1 or 2% a year. But I think if the 1970s are any gauge, and that is the most recent inflationary cycle that we've gone through, the period to be buying is the first 7 or 8 years of the cycle. It's only the last 2 or 3. I mean, that cycle was like 12, 13 years long
Yeah,
to really get out of that inflationary cycle. So I think that, for the next 3, 4, 5 years, if it persists, and you're going to have to take it and gauge, how that's moving, if we really genuinely feel that prices are going to come down. And more than listening to what the Fed says, that's going to be an experiential thing. How much does it cost you when you go to the mall? Like, how much is stuff? Because I want that real tangible sense. Because they tell me sometimes there's no inflation, yet my haircut keeps going up in price, and I have less hair. I figure I should be getting a discount, and the prices keep going up. So you want to have that a little bit of that seat of the pants interpretation, which means, guess what, folks? You can't just look at the news and get a pass. You got to actually be doing this crazy thing called paying attention.
yeah,
Pay
you got to pay
attention to
attention.
everything.
I couldn't agree more. And so obviously you've used debt to grow your business,
Absolutely.
and you brought up a good point there too, because even if the rates are up now 5-6%, it's with that, it's still, the appreciation of real estate will outbeat the cost of debt, and your money sitting in the bank, is gonna do
Absolutely.
isn't gonna do anything, for you. So
Worse. Let's be
yeah,
clear what's
yeah,
going
you'll
on in your
lose
money in
money.
the
Yeah,
bank. You're
you
bleeding to death.
yeah,
You are bleeding to
yeah,
death
it's
in your money.
dangerous. Yeah,
You're
it's true.
losing 9% a year minimum.
Yep.
You're
And I
down 9.
and you bring up a good point too, because you talk about like pockets that you're kind of in this pocket in the southeast of what's going on, which is a little bit different than what may be going on in the Midwest or elsewhere. And I think it's really important to pay attention right now because it talks of recession, all this stuff. And I think, different industries, or even if you're in the same industry but in a different area, what's happening in your area versus another area of the country may be very different. And we're already seeing this with the business lending that I do, that it's just become very pockety depending on where you're located,
Sure.
depending on what your industry is tied to. Some businesses are crushing it right now. Some are having challenges. Some are in the same industries in different areas, and it's just way different. And then also, the business owners that are changing their approaches in real time are the ones winning. The ones that are just trying to do the same old thing, not make the adjustments, are really getting their ass kicked. So I think you really have to, pay attention right now to what's going on in your area. Not you got to always look at what's going on macro, but like what's happening where you are, where your focus is, because what in your area and what you're doing in your niche, whatever that is, real estate or any industry, it might be completely different elsewhere. So you got to just be careful about the news that you're intaking, and you got to really pay attention to what's going on in your little economy.
Absolutely. I mean, and that stems from really knowing your product. It circles back to knowing your product. What things affect the thing that I do? Because the thing that I do is I help customers, right? And I help customers with a product and with lending products and all sorts of things that I bring in to help them acquire my product. I need to be aware how anything that changes affects my ability to actually help that customer by sizing them and connecting them with the right product. I mean, as a lender, right? It's the same thing, right? As
Same
new
thing.
loan products come out, I'm looking to constantly size and pick the thing that's going to help you best solve your particular problem.
I'm the Match.com of business lending. I'm matching lenders and entrepreneurs, business owners to the right financing.
Love it, man. Love it. Absolutely. Better than being the Tinder of
Yes,
of
yes.
finance, right?
We
Right.
keep it clean and professional around here.
Absolutely. But
Well, good
yeah,
stuff,
I mean,
Josh.
that's really where it's at. I think that I fully anticipate seeing more appreciation in this market. I don't think it's going to come anywhere near. I'm thinking single digit, but high single digit appreciation and high single digit rent increases. And this is the reason why real estate, even at 5 caps, which is what I'm seeing people buy at down at 5% rates of return, still make even below. Actually, we're getting closer and closer to 4.5
Yeah.
as an industry standard. But I see buying those still making sense because when I do those on a differential cash flow on a 5 or 6 year hold, anticipating similar rent increases to what we saw in the last inflationary cycle and figuring on appreciation actually below the appreciation we saw in the last cycle, we're still looking at 18, 16% internal rate service in there. If I throw a mortgage in there, I'm in mid-20s for most of these properties.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then, don't forget about the cash out refis, non-tax, and
Absolutely.
recapitalizing, your principal, a part of it, or your down payment, et cetera.
Absolutely. And I mean, the opportunity to 1031 exchange out of stuff and get into bigger things so that you're
Yep.
picking up that higher depreciation. All of this is, if agents are out there and that sounds like Greek to them, by all means, that's a part of your product you need to understand because turning that
100%.
residential customer into an investor is the greatest thing. Look, getting him out of the rental and selling him that house is probably the best piece of financial advice you ever gave them in their whole life. Now, get them to go take some equity out and go buy an investment property, get some income coming in from that property, and experience the appreciation instead of the inflation that they're experiencing with their money sitting in the bank. One of the greatest lines I've ever heard Was teaching a class. I'll never forget. I was in Las Vegas. It was the biggest venues I ever taught. It was like 1,000 people in the room, and I was scared out of my mind. I had to go to this big high stage, giant screen. And so I found like a guy, maybe 3 or 4 rows back, and I just kind of focused on him at the beginning to get myself over the hump. And so got past the first couple minutes and I was fine. But the guy came up to me at the end of the class. I never forget. He said, because I do this little thing about a can of Coke and explaining inflation through a can of Coke. And he says to me, Josh, I love that bit on inflation. I heard this line a long time ago. I wanted to give it to you. He said, what's the difference between experiencing inflation and appreciation? I said, I don't know. He said, ownership. And I was like, wow. That's so true. Because here's the thing, folks. Those of you that have experienced this inflation realize that your friend that bought that property, they've experienced appreciation of that property while you sat there and watched the value of your money tank.
It's a really great point. That's definitely will get you to stop and think. Well, good stuff, Josh. And I think we'll end on that quote. It was powerful and really good stuff. And if you're listening, you really should stop and think about that, especially if you're not an owner or not investing and reallocating your money. Really good stuff. Thanks for joining today, Josh. I appreciate all said. Love what you're doing. I love the close for life. I'm all about closing for life myself, and really appreciate the mission that you're on. Just as we wrap up here, I believe you got a book coming out soon.
That is true stuff. I believe the book is going to be called Close for Life. There was definitely a push to try to get to be called Know Your Shit, because I'm a big fan of that. That's the name of my podcast, is the Know Your Shit podcast. But I think Close for Life is a little bit more acceptable in all circles.
I love it. No, it makes sense. I get it. Well, I'm looking forward to the book. I can't wait to read it. And if folks want to, find you, look you up, Josh, how can they go about and do that?
On social media, it's usually Joshua Cadillac. Instagram, it's Josh D Cadillac. I do a lot of posting there. Do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn as well. And the podcast, as I said, is knowyourshit.com. Closeforlife.com is the website. You can find pretty much everything that's going on there, where I'm teaching, what I'm doing. So if you want to come see what I think real estate education should look like, that's where it's at.
Great stuff. Well, thanks again for joining, Josh. If you want to learn more about Josh, go check him out. If you want to learn more about real estate and be a closer for life, definitely look out, look into what Josh is doing. I appreciate you being here. Great stuff today, and keep doing what you're doing,
brother. Absolute pleasure to hang out with you, man.
Thanks. Same to you, man. Be well and keep growing.
Yes, sir.